get the time to do yesterday's assignment. I know I sent it late, but I was like thinking about it for hours, and then finally I decided upon something that I think was good enough. So if you attempted, how was the assignment? Did you get any practice with Tailwind, with VueJS, with breaking into components? It was really good. Nice. Good to hear. So I had to think about how what to do, right? Then I ended up again doing the office thing. But yeah. Yeah, if you are not done with day one, first do the day one and then do day two. And then day three will be like even going forward with it. So yeah, I hope apart from the practice, you are first reading the readings that I have shared. So yesterday's reading was in three parts actually. So Vue.js, then some Tailwind, and then watching Faris do the thing, Figma to Tailwind view components. Cool, let's start. So we had an app, if I'm not wrong. So Vue Office. Let's open it up in VS Code. Yeah. So again, we have an empty app.vue file. So by now, you might be very familiar with this app.vue thing. And what I want right now is to install a package, right? A Confetti package. So when the user clicks a button, Confetti shows up, right? So let's add a button first. And Confetti celebrate, right? I'm again copy pasting the wrong thing. Yeah, this works. So now we have a button, very unstyled button, but let's give it some styling. BG line 800 and then text line 50, padding 2, rounded, then yeah, sounds about right. And then I will give it, put it inside a div and give it a margin of 3. Nice. So now we have a button which when you click should show confetti, but that confetti is not something we are going to build from scratch, right? There are packages out there, confetti, canvas confetti. So anything you can find on npm.js, right? Uh, you can install it into your Vue project or React project, like any node-based project using the command npm install and then the name of the package. Same will be true when we install FrappeUI, npm install FrappeUI. So let's copy this line, go back to our terminal and run this command, right? npm install dash canvas confetti. So this package will bring the confetti feature. It's already installed. And let's read about how to use this. So we can import confetti from canvas confetti. Okay, let's import it in our script area. Import confetti from canvas confetti, right? And then it takes some options. Fine. But what we can do is we can check its demo website. So they have a basic canon for which they will give the code. Let's see. So the process is same for any kind of npm packages. So usually when you install, right, you will be able to see that package inside your package.json file. dependencies, and see canvas confetti. So view was one of the dependencies. Canvas confetti we just installed. So this can be any date parsing library, right? For example, in many of the Frappe apps, we use day.js for formatting and working with dates, right? So yeah, you can install library package.json and that's it. It will go automatically to package.json. Yeah, we were seeing how to do this. Let's copy this part and paste it here. Oh, we have already the confetti working, right? Because we didn't add it on button click, we directly added it here. So when this code was run, the confetti was triggered. So if I refresh, it will come again. But we want to do this on button click, right? So let's add a click listener here. Click, which is short for this at is short for v on, right? Show confetti, and then I will create a function for this here. Function show confetti, and then I'll move this here, right? So now what is happening? On button click, we are calling this show confetti function, and then show confetti is calling the confetti with proper arguments, right? So now when we click the button, nice. Does it make sense? Cool. So this is how you install external packages and use them. And yeah, this can't be done without the build process, right? You can't do npm install and directly link into your JS file and serve that JS file directly. Somehow the build process will extract JavaScript from here, bundle it with your JavaScript. We'll discuss that when we discuss the build command and what happens when you do it for production, right? The production build. Yeah. So yeah, let's begin with Frappe UI. And the first thing to note is, let's open up a new window and this will be full screen. And here I will go to frappeui.com, right? And notice we haven't touched Frappe app yet, right? What we are doing is directly installing Frappe UI in a normal VueJS app. No connection to framework or custom apps yet. So that is possible. So getting started. We don't want this part. So this will give you the starter with all the setup, but we want to do it from scratch, right? So what I will do is I will install Frappe UI directly using npm install, and then we'll do the manual setup. Clear npm install Frappe-UI, right? So this will install the Frappe UI package that we have published on npm. How to make table using Tailwind CSS. So there is styling table section in Tailwind CSS documentation. Just check that out. They have some good examples. Come here and search for table. You will see some examples as well as how to do this fixed with things. But yeah, it is here. 4 pages actually. Cool, let's get back. So Frappe UI is installed. We will be able to see the version it installed in package.json. See 0.1.60. And if we visit Frappe UI in GitHub, right? It is on site frappe slash FrappeUI, and the latest version is 0.1.60, which is correct, right? Don't look at releases. We are not doing releases nowadays, but you can check the commit and you will find out what's the latest one. Cool. Let's get back. It is installed, right? Like first step is to install the FrappeUI package. That's it. And next, what we have to do is like FrappeUI is based on a design system called Espresso, right? It brings in components, pre-built components. So the badge we built, FrappeUI has built that badge and we want to use it, right? But FrappeUI has defined its own color palette, its own theme, right? On top of Tailwind CSS. So in the configuration, we have to somehow tell Tailwind that use FrappeUI ka configuration, right? So we'll go to Tailwind config, and here we have to tell this that use FrappeUI's config, right? And you don't have to remember any of this stuff. Great artists steal, right? So let's go to any FrappeUI based app. So for now, let's take Builder. Let's take Builder. Go into the front end, right? And go into its Tailwind CSS, Tailwind config JS. And you will see that we have to import this thing, Tailwind config, right? Here from FrappeUI /src /utils /tailwind config. So we are importing some things from FrappeUI's tailwind config. And then here we say presets, right? This config is the preset. So you will see a lot of things went away because I think Lime is not defined in FrappeUI. That is why Lime went away. So this was the first step. The second is to tell Tailwind that we also want you to generate classes for all the FrappeUI components, right? And these two lines do that. Node modules /FrappeUI /src /components. So just copy this to your content. So this were the two changes required in the configuration. One, we tell Tailwind that we want to use the configuration provided by FrappeUI. And two, we want to tell Tailwind that apart from whatever the code we write or the classes we use, also generate Tailwind classes for the files that are inside FrappeUI, right? Cool. So this was the two piece that you needed to do. And now let's try using FrappeUI, right? What did we do? We installed and we configured the Tailwind config, nothing else. We hadn't configured anything else, just two things. And now I'll go back to app.view. And if you see what all components are available in FrappeUI, there is autocomplete, avatar, badge. Let's start with the badge because we have ourselves built a badge. And you can see there are 4 variants available: solid, subtle, outline. And if you click on outline, you will see how to use it in your view component, view project, right? And you have sizing utilities as well. So MD, then large badge. So I'll go with SM and let's pick the green one. And let's copy this. So what you can do is now, just like we imported Confetti, right? What we can do is let this be here. I'll just comment it out. I will import badge from Frappe UI and I will use it here. And let's see if this appears. We might have to restart the dev server. Let's try that. Okay, there is some issue. Looks like it. Let's see JavaScript console for what's wrong. The requested module does not provide export default feather icons. Okay, we missed one setup step. That will happen inside vite config. Okay. And then again, great ask is steal, right? So we'll go to vite config of any front-end app based on FrappeUI. So vite config. and we have to copy this part. See, optimize depths, copy it here. Again, I will list down these steps for you. But yeah, mostly you won't be doing this manually. Let's go back. See, our batch is there, ready to go. Is it visible? Should I zoom in? See, we got a badge just by doing what? We imported it from FrappeUI. So if you understood the concept of components yesterday, you will know what FrappeUI is doing. It has styled and done everything for you. You just import and use, right? That's it. So now we have the badge and we are using it here. We don't want the label part. And we can switch the theme to the default one if you want to, which will be gray. And if you want the default variant, which will be solid, right? As easy as that. Now you're using FrappeUI in a VueJS project without the Frappe backend, right? So Frappe backend is not a requirement for running FrappeUI. If you have a normal VueJS plus Tailwind CSS based app, you can use it in your app. Like not all of its functionalities. We'll get to what additional it provides when it comes to connecting to Frappe backend, that we'll see. But yeah, is it clear? Like you can use the UI components out of the box. Let's try one more. So we used badge. Let's try the button. So there are like solid button, settle button, outline button. Let's try the solid button. And I want it to be, let's say, blue button, right? Settle looks nice. So let's try the settle one. And you can either copy it, right? You have to import it. So let's import button and use it here. And I will say show con celebrate, right? And you see, there's our button. You can remove any of the options you don't want. But yeah, this looks good. I'll remove the badge. We are no longer using that. Badge, both sounds very similar, right? So yeah, and now this is a button, right? So it has alt click as well, even though it's a custom component, right? So I can come here and say alt click show confetti, right? And then uncomment this part. And now if I click on celebrate, confetti shows up. Nice. But you don't have to style the button, right? You get the component of the box, you use it, it looks nice, and you can switch themes. You can switch the variant. See? Makes sense. Nothing like if you don't understand the first 2 days, it will look complex and foreign to you. But once you understand that part, clearly like these are components and that's it. Why would you also, Wasim says Frappe UI have some limited props like theme, size. What if we want to pass any custom props? Why would you want to pass a custom prop? Right? Because the component is Frappe UI's component, right? It only asks for what it can handle. If you want your own stuff, build your own components on top of Frappe UI ka components, which has been done in CRM. So Sharik extended Frappe UI's list view to add some more stuff. So that you can always do. You can build a button on top of this button. Create your own button.view, put this, ask the extra props, done. Nanda Gopal asks, possible to use material theme? No. So Frappe UI is Frappe UI, right? It gives you the UI. If you want to use material UI, then there are other packages. Material view, I think it's called Vueify or yeah, Vuetify, yes. Latest version. Same process. If you want to use this package, just npm install Vuetify and use it. This will look very similar. They give you that, okay, configure this, configure that. But once you have done that, you can start using it. Like, let me just take some components. I think it also has chips. What else? Radio button. Yeah. So you just import and use it just like any other components, right? Make sense? Nanda Gopal, badges. Oh, these are inline, floating. See. So the process will be same, but instead of using FrappeUI, you will be using Vuetify. Progress circular. So you can play around with this. There is one more, if I don't like, that is not VueJS, that you can use in any Tailwind CSS based app, right? Or portal page even. I have a video on that, how to use Tailwind CSS in portal pages. That is called Daisy UI. Not in the scope of this course, but as you can see, the most popular component library for Tailwind CSS. So it gives you pre-styled components. For example, let's see badge. Badge is our favorite nowadays, but see. So every component library has its own styles, right? Material has its own, Frappe has its own. So why would you want to insert one into other? Think about it. Cool. So they also have variants. But yeah, check this out. This is also good. This you can use in any front-end app based on Tailwind CSS, not Vue, not just Vue, React or anything. Yeah, check it out as well. You'll get some ideas. Nice. Open source. Cool. Let's get back to the track, what we were doing. Does it make sense? You can start using this. Let's use one more component that is a little bit more sophisticated. It gives you this dialog box, right? See the dialog box? Let's try to use it in our app, right? So there is the dialog component we have to import. Let's import the dialog component. I will get rid of the badge. I will have the dialog here. And you can see what props it takes in the documentation part, if there is documentation, of course. Let me just, yeah. That's docs. See, it takes a title. So I think that's the title of the dialog. So we'll come back here. We'll say we are passing options. And as soon as you see this thing, you understand this is vbind, right? We are dynamically binding the options to an object with some properties. So title will be our awesome dialog or dialog, whatever, pick your poison. Title, we want a message, dialog content, right? And then what else you can give it? You can give it the size. So this is, I think, Excel. So let's give it a size of Excel. Yeah, that's it. I will leave it at this. And how do you show this dialog, right? How do you show this? So V model, see, not just inputs, but components can define their own V model. So if this dialog one variable is true, this dialog will be shown. If this is false, it won't be shown, right? And then on button click, we are just setting this variable to true. right? Let's try it. So I will create a const show dialog equal to ref, right? We want it to be reactive because it depends on the UI. We show, like behind the scenes, maybe Frappe UI is using we show, right? We don't want to meddle with that API. We want to use what the components interface is providing, right? So let's say false. So initially it is false, but on button click, instead of show confetti, we'll say show dialog equal to true. You can write expressions here, by the way. And if I click on celebrate, now it will be show dialog, of course. Dialog. And let's see if dialog appears. It doesn't seem to appear. So what can be the issue? Let's see the JavaScript console. Okay, we didn't bind it, right? So we forgot vModel. vModel equal to show dialog. Cool. See, our dialog appeared. So let's close. Again, click show dialog. Our dialog is here. Again, click close. It's gone. But yeah, it works, right? So we didn't have to build a dialog ourselves. We didn't have to like the logic that it appears on top of everything. We didn't write the styles or this backdrop or anything, right? We got stuff out of the box so we can quickly build the thing we are here to build, right? So let's do one thing. I think this is it for the part where we are just using, what do you say, Frappe UI, right? And not connected to Frappe backend. Does this make sense? You can, like, if you have a normal VueJS app, you can still install Frappe UI and use it. That is fine. Any questions in this part before we proceed to connecting with a Frappe app? That will take time. vModel use. So we saw that yesterday, right? When you do vModel, any variable, right? Variable name. So this input will be kept, this input ka value will be kept in sync with this variable. Remember, two-way binding. Similarly, the dialog component has implemented its own vModel, which says, if you give me true, I will show the dialog. If you give me false, I will hide the dialog and I will keep it in sync. Make sense? So when you said show dialog equal to true, I will show the dialog. If it is false, I will hide the dialog. Showing, hiding, everything will be managed by Frappe UI behind the scenes. But it is giving us a control that, okay, you give me a variable which I can watch, right? Which I can watch and say when to show the dialog or not. Does this make sense? So Kitty says, what if you change vModel to vShow? What will happen, I wonder? So not something you would expect. Try it out. That is the game, right? If we say we show, see, uh, click on show dialog, see, it is not visible, right? Because Frappe UI behind the scene might be doing more than just we showing it. It has to apply the transition. It has to do some logic to inject it into the DOM properly. Because dialog is not a simple component that is inline in the DOM, right? It appears on top of everything. It has some Z index or whatever. But yeah, simple we show will just not do what you are expecting. That is why such complex components give you some APIs that you can use. Cool. So this was dialog. So Kitty, whenever like you think what will happen when you change this, try changing it and you will clearly see what happens. Because we won't be able to cover each and every component, right? Like a lot of them have docs. So for example, ListView, right? It's a sophisticated component. So it has, you can select a simple list and go to the docs and you can read. Let's proceed. Any other questions on this part? It's just like importing your own component, but somebody else wrote it, right? That's it. and they have defined what props they take. For example, this takes options as prop. This takes theme, variant, and size as prop, right? So we build our own batch component based on the prop we were assigning the color, if you remember, right? So behind the scenes button, if you open up the code of button, it will also be assigning Tailwind classes based on theme and size. That's it. Cool. Let's proceed. So when we create our app and after installing dependencies, how do we run our app, right? So we run it. It is running here, if you see in the terminal, using npm run dev, right? So what this does is it will, in your package.json file, in the scripts area, it will look for the dev command. We want npm to run this dev script. That is what we are saying, right? And dev runs vite, right? So vite starts a development server where it has hot reload. So as you change the file, it automatically reloads and updates the UI of the page and modules, right? But there are two other commands. One is build and one is preview. So this dev server, you can't deploy, right? This is just a development server. So how do you get the files that you can actually deploy on a web server, right? For production use, right? Because ultimately what the browser wants, it wants HTML, CSS, JavaScript, not Vue files, not TypeScript files, not NPM packages, plain HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? For that, we have to run npm run build. So this will process your project, compile, view, or whatever packages you have, bundle them in normal HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Let's run this. And you will see it started building for production. It is done. And if you see what it generated was, it generated an HTML file, it generated a CSS file, and a JavaScript file. You take it anywhere to any server that can serve these files, or any normal web server works. Bench build also behind the scenes runs build commands, which go in packages and check whether they have build commands for each app. Bench build does, like if you give dash dash app, it will run for that particular app. But yeah, behind the scenes, this is what happens when you run bench build. Might be doing some extra stuff after and before, but yeah, mostly this is what happens. And where does it store, right? If you see, it stored it inside dist folder, and it stored the CSS and JS inside dist/assets. So let's check if we have the dist folder here. And indeed we have it, right? Yeah, make this full screen. And if you see, dist has index.html, right? It has assets. So if you see closely, it on line 8, it is linking to a JavaScript file. And on line 9, it is linking to a CSS file that was this JavaScript file. You won't be able to read it because it processes it, minifies it, whatever source you had. CSS, same thing. It minifies it. It will process, so it has minimum size. So this you can take to production, right? So what happened when we run bench build, bench build, npm run build, it runs white build, wheat, and wheat processes your whole source index.html, your components, and outputs something that you can deploy, right? HTML, CSS, JavaScript, which the browser can understand. So right now, if you open index.html directly, right? Let's open it using live server. There might be issues with what do you say? Figuring these two files. Like might not be able to figure it out, but yeah, let's do one thing. Let's copy this somewhere and try to see if we are able to get the thing that we built, right? Let's do that. So I will go to the terminal. Come on. Dot dot mk. So I'll create a new directory. My website. cd my website. Oh, I already have. and I will open it up, right? And I will paste whatever output that got generated here. And that too I will do. Reveal in Finder. And I want this. What am I doing? I'm moving this disk ka content, right? This thing. Suppose this is my web server, right? And now I will open this my website in VS Code. So this was the output, right? Index.html file, then assets. And now let's try to open it up in live server. You will see, this is the app we built, right? This is the app we built. Plain HTML, CSS, JavaScript. No .view, no nothing. Everything got processed. This is what build tools do. At the end, they will give you something that you can run in a normal browser. Make sense? So now answer one question. If I have an index.html file, right? Or abc.html file. In custom Frappe apps, how do you create or serve a normal HTML page? In which folder of a custom app can we do that? www, right? So if I take this index.html file, I call it whatever, like if you don't want it to be the home page, index is always the home page, and places inside the www directory of my app, then Frappe will serve it. What about the assets? Tell me, where does Frappe store static assets in your custom app? Assets, no. Assets folder is in the sites. That is done after the process. So public folder. So you put them in the public folder of your custom app. When you run bench build, Frappe will take those, whatever you have in the public folder, and symlink into the assets folder. And that will be served by Nginx. So now, if theoretically I put index.html in www directory, and the assets in the public directory, our Frappe app should be able to serve this Vue app. Correct or not? Yes, let's try it. And if we are able to do that, you have figured out the whole stack. Let's see. Clear. Let me open a bench and create a new app. Let's start with a new app. Cd cd frappe bench 0. Let's do bench start. For the first time in this 3 days training, we are starting the bench. Okay. Duplicate tab. And I want to create a new app. Let's call it what? View to do. Let's call it view to do. That is fine. View to do. App description. To do app based on Frappe framework and UI. Okay. App publisher is built with Hussain. App email is Hussain at frappe.io. MIT licensed. Maybe yes, do it. Branch name develop is fine. And I'm creating a new Frappe app. Right. Cool. It created a new Frappe app. Let's create a new site. Bench new site. Or should we use an existing site? Site creation doesn't take much time. To dot local host. I'm still using MariaDB 10.3. Someone is going to shout someday. But yeah, till it doesn't let me create sites, I'm fine. Rule, right? Don't touch the bench until bench breaks. Let's have some water till it creates my site. It's taking unusual time, but it's fine. Usually it takes a few seconds. That is fine. Cool, 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 cool. We are on track, by the way. So today we'll build a to-do app, and then we'll start working on our final e-commerce project with authentication, with routing, whole thing going on. Wait, am I in? Oh, just asked once. If I recall the last time it used to ask administrator password twice. Cool. Maybe they changed something. Cool, that is fine. Let's install the app on the site. Bench dash dash site. To do dot localhost install app view to do. Done. So now let's open that site in the browser. To do dot localhost port 8000. I'm pretty sure it won't work because I did one thing. Ha. While I was explaining something someone, I commented out the web server from the proc file. Neat. Now I have to restart the bench. I should have reverted it then, but yeah. Let's open up the browser now. Nice. So Frappe's front end is broken. Bench build dash dash app Frappe. So this is some issue in my local that I have to figure out. It always breaks the front end whenever I restart the bench. Cool. Now let's go back to our site and log in as administrator ADMIN. And let's do one more thing. I will open the to-do app in VS Code. And let's do the setup. Even if we don't do the setup, that is fine. But let's do it anyways. So what did I do? I just created a new site, a new app, installed the app on the site. And on one side, we have this production built of our Vue app, right? Cool. So let me just check if the app is installed. Vue to do is installed, right? And what were we discussing? If we put, we have the Vue to do, and there is a www directory. If we put the HTML file here, it will serve it, right? So I'll just create a todo.html here and copy paste the content. I have moved it somewhere else. That is fine. Yeah, here. I'll just copy paste the content. So instead of slash, it will be served at slash to do. So because www has file based routing, right? And then this assets, right? We have to place it in the public folder. Let's go in the public folder and copy over this whole assets folder. So I will reveal in Finder and bring it in the public folder. Make sense? What did I do? I brought it inside assets. But do you remember how we reference this here? Anybody? Slash assets slash the custom app ka name, right? So if you don't recall, just go to Frappe Framework static assets, and look for the documentation. Every app has its own public folder, that is fine, which can be used to serve static. So the folder is symlinked to this. Here is the output. This means if there is a file at this, then it also exists as symlink at this. It is accessible publicly via the URL slash assets slash app name, and then whatever is the path inside that, right? So just a recap. So let's go back. This is our view app. This is the custom app. So I'll go to slash assets slash view to do slash assets again, because we should call it something else. Maybe let's rename this to, let's keep it that way. If there is a problem, we will see. Slash assets slash view to do slash assets. So we don't have to mention the public slash public here. We can just directly start with this path. Cool. So now theoretically it should work, right? We put the HTML inside this and we properly linked the assets, right? By placing them in the proper folder and changing the path. Don't worry, you don't have to do it manually ever again, but I'm telling you, like, do you understand till this point? Let's try to open slash to do in browser in our custom app or the Frappe site. View to do, or what was it? To do.localhost slash to do. Should I hit enter? Boom. Works. So indeed our theory was correct, right? This is the whole premise of anything. Any Frappe app you see, any labs product you see. So instead of todo.html, they have copied it to builder.html. So it's at slash builder. Instead of todo.html, they have copied the content of the build output to lms.html. That is why it's at slash lms. But everything is inside www assets. That's it. Is this whole thing clear? Won't proceed until this part is clear. Because the next step, you'll understand only if you understand this. You don't have to ever manually do this, by the way. This will happen automatically for you. And we'll see how. Cleared? It is automated, Louis. I was showing just to tell you if something breaks, something is not working as expected, assets are breaking, or your front end is not accessible at slash this, where to check in your custom app. You run the command. If the automation doesn't work, you can go and check in public folder. Okay, are the assets generated? You can check in www folder. Was the HTML file automatically generated? Because now you understand the process, what actually happens behind those automations, right? That is the more important thing than the actual correct process. So you have to understand what is the base, right? On what framework features this thing is running on. Just two, www directory and the public directory. If you correctly automate the part of generating the HTML and properly this path and the assets, you are good to go. You don't want to do this again and again, right? You don't want to like again go and build your Frappe app, and now when you want like build your view app, you add a new dialog or you add a new badge, you again build it, copy paste it to your Frappe app and push it to GitHub. This is how we do it? No. So this all should happen automatically when you run bench build, and the Frappe or the app, whatever view app should live with your app, right? And that is what we will do. So for automating these two pieces, right? This has to happen during the build. And let's see how we can automate these two pieces. Cool. Cool. Builder. Let's go to builder. And the first piece of automation is when view builds the app, we want it to place the assets inside the public folder, right? So let's go back. I closed it, I guess, but let's open it up again. Not wrap, item. Where did we keep our view app? I think was inside build with us and view office. 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 But it won't work here. So let's do one thing. What I will do is either you can create a directly new view project here, right? Or I will drop the whole folder inside this view office folder. So let's go to Macintosh HD. Or should we start from scratch? Other way, we have to clean up. So let's not start from scratch and use the existing one. Where is my folder? Build with Husan, yeah. And then we have the view office folder, right? And I will copy the front end over to my custom app. Copy folder. See, now we have the front end living inside our custom app, right? Visible, view office. And now we can do magical stuff. We'll go to the vite config. We'll tell it that after you have built, right, whatever you built, places inside this apps. So in this case, it is builder, but in our case, it will be something else. So build, right? And output directory, outdoor, should be what? The public folder. So dot slash, right? We have to go one folder above because we are here and I want it to go. Oh, one folder above, correct. One folder above to our custom app, which is named view to do. Inside that, there is a public folder. And then that's it, right? So what this will do is this will automate the part of us copying the generated JavaScript CSS assets into the public folder. We will make sure it generates it there. So you don't have to copy it manually. Make sense? This was the first part of automation. And we can copy this part as well. At least this one. So if it's already copied, make sure it empties it. So let's also make sure we do front end. Not required, but clearly we are seeing, right, /assets twice. So this should solve that. And then empty out directory. So whenever you build it again and again, it will empty it. Otherwise, it will raise an error that, okay, there is already something there. How can I put more stuff? Cool. This was the first part of automation. The second part, the copying of HTML, right? It is inside package.json. So if you see our build command, the out of the box build command, it is vite build, right? Which is fine. But we add one more command here, copy HTML entry, right? So let's add one more command here, copy HTML entry. We are automating the copying of HTML file part to the www directory. Remember, it just copies cp is the copy command. Copy this to builder.html. In this case, we will do todo.html, and our app name is view to do, right? View to do, and public/frontend Why? Because we set front end here, public slash front end. So this should match. Because what vite will do is it will also place the HTML file there after the build. So we have to copy it from there to www directory. That is what we are doing. And then we'll say whenever build is run, also run this, which will be, I think we are using yarn or npm, anything works. Make sense till now? Or we can npm run. This also works. So what will happen after vite has done building? It will run this command, which will copy the index.html to todo.html. This is what we did manually, right? Is it making sense? What we are automating? Because if you only understand the manual process, then only you will be able to figure out what we are automating. Just one piece remaining, that is we have to tell vite that the base of the assets, which is the part where we went and edited the HTML file, right? We went and edited this part. This is what we are telling vite to do automatically for us by providing this option. Instead of builder, it will be view to do. So the three things that we did manually were first, copy the assets, which is automated by this piece. Second, copy the HTML file to the correct location, which is this piece. Third, we in the HTML file, we changed the path of the base path to slash wherever we place the assets, right? Third piece. All three are automated now. Make sense? Again, you don't have to manually do it, and this is just a one-time thing. So first time you create, like you have to do it. And if you are using Doppio behind the scenes generate all of this. That is what Doppio is, right? It has got 150 stars, but it is doing this thing. It is configuring your this stuff properly. Now you understand what Doppio is doing. So you don't have to do this manually again and again. But if you understand this once, done. Three pieces, right? To automate, all three automated. Let's try running this. What I will do is I will delete the whatever we did manually. So I will delete the todo.html. I will delete the assets folder, right? And now I will run the command to see if the automations work. Sometimes it breaks for the first time. I will be surprised if it runs properly in the first go. So I will say npm run. Oh, we have to go inside the Vue app, by the way. We are inside the custom app. So it is Vue Office. And then npm run build. It is building. And it is done. It copied the HTML tree as well. Now let's check our custom app. And correctly, we have the todo.html file. And inside the public, we have frontend. We called it frontend, and then inside that assets, right? And if we check the index.html file, it has correctly used the path that we told it to. See? All the three steps automated. Awesome. Now you don't have to ever worry about it. Cool. Yeah. Just one more thing. How do we make sure that when anyone runs bench build, even in production, right? Like this will happen at build step. You won't be manually pushing these files. You won't be manually pushing this HTML. This has to happen at build step, right? You won't be pushing this build. These are called build assets to your GitHub, right? So that is why we have to add them to the git ignore. We'll add ww. So that will be view to do slash www slash todo.html. And we also don't want What else? We don't want this to be pushed to GitHub as well. I'll tell you why. This will be public slash front end. See, now it is get ignored. We don't have to push this or the todo.html. This has to happen when we run bench build. This will happen, right? In Frappe Cloud, when you push this app, Frappe Cloud will run the build command and the assets will be generated and they will be copied to the correct place. So for that, we have to just do one thing. We have to create a package.json file in the root of our app, right? So that you can do by visiting the root and running npm init dash dash. Yes, we just need an empty package.json file. And inside this build, cd into, so we are telling whoever is running bench build, we are telling cd into view office and npm run build. So Frappe uses yarn, so yarn build works. What we are doing? Because the bench build command looks for the build command in the package.json of the root, we created that and we are just proxying it. Okay, I don't have anything, just cd into the view app and run the build command. That will take care of everything. Similarly, to install the dependencies, post install, cd into my view app. Again, Doppio does this for you. And then run yarn install. Does this make sense? What did we do? This is to make sure that bench build command works. Now, if you try to run bench build, right, for this app, let's try that. Bench build dash dash app view to do. See, it properly runs the stuff. It is installing Frappe UI, Canvas, Confetti, whatever we are referring to. Okay, it's taken some time, but that's fine. First time it installs all the dependencies. In development, mostly you won't be running build once you have tested that, okay, everything works. You will only be working in development server. So you might be thinking, why is it installing it again? So what is happening is it installing it inside the app node modules now. We already have the node modules inside. Where is it? This. That is why it's installing it again. So bench can use it. Why can't we push that these things in GitHub? These two things, whatever output was generated, because that generated at build time, right? When like that is not your source code. Your source code is the source of truth, right? That is what you push. And the assets are derived from your source code using a process. And they will change, right? When the build command will be run, they will change. So a good example would be, what will be a good example of this? Let me think about it. Okay, so you don't push your database tables directly to GitHub, right? You push the JSON, and then when migrate is run, JSON is reflected into your database. Same thing. You push your source code, the assets will be reflected when the command runs. Make sense? Analogy. Does it work for production after pull then? So whoever pulls your app, they have to run bench build. That is why front end changes, you require bench build. JSON changes, you require bench migrate. Python changes, you need bench restart. Either my internet is slow or the packages are too much. We didn't have too much packages. Any questions till then? Could you show package.json again with, okay. So this is the root package.json. It's doing nothing, but it's seeding into our view app. The main package.json is this one. 3 steps. Just remember the 3 steps. make sure the assets are placed in public directory. HTML is this thing is properly replaced in the HTML file, and then we copy the HTML file to the www directory. Just that. In automatic, no, we will have it inside that. We started outside, but generally you will have it inside the app to start with. You will need to ship this, right? This is your front end code. It will go to GitHub. You can directly go to your custom app and run the create command that we have been running for the past 2 days, right? See, it's building for production. Something failed. Let's see. I knew it. What failed? View router. Oh, okay. FrappeUI depends on view router. Ha. What we can do is we can copy this line. So FrappeUI is a peer dependency. Don't worry, we will learn about view router in the next. Now it is installing view router. Let it do that. So when we start our e-commerce project, we won't be doing any of this manually. I'll show you the better way to do this. It is done. Everything works. Let's go to our Frappe site, which was, what was it? todo.localhost 8000 slash todo. And it still works. Nice. Must watch, must rewatch today's lecture, right? It's very important to understand how this stack is working. So Gopi asks, why do we need to restart the bench after updating the Python code? I'm doing this, but don't know why it is necessary. In production, right? In production, you have to do this. In development, you don't. It automatically restarts. The code is cached, right? The code which is being run, which the web server uses, is cached. When you pull latest code, it doesn't automatically pick up your new code from the file system until you restart. That is why. Cool. Let's build a simple to-do app and we'll see what other pieces are there which only work with a Frappe backend. So yeah, view office, that's fine. Let's keep this view office, but we'll be doing to do. So I'll delete everything else that we have. I'll keep this. App.view is fine. So how do you develop, right? Like suppose you installed LMS or you installed Builder or anything. So you won't be running build and then watching it, right? You want the same experience developing, right? That is same, right? You just go into your view app, right? Directory, and then you run npm run dev or yarn dev, both work. And it will open it up just like this, right? But this is localhost, right? And when you make requests to the backend, right, they won't go through. Course we learned yesterday, right? Cross origin request thing. And all of the APIs when we call, right? Let me just open up a new page, right? So view by default, is it visible? Yeah. Localhost something something 5173. This is the dev server. This is where the development build of our Vue app is running, right? The front end is served. Where is our site running? It is running on lms.localhost port 8000. LMS, so whatever. Correct, right? This is where the site is running. This is where our front end is running. So from our front end, So the APIs will be like this /API. So if you remember, there is a REST API in Frappe, right? /API/resource. If you're using v2 /API/v2/document/to do, right? So if you want to make a request on this endpoint, which will be if you make this request from here, it will be like consider the relative URL. It will be making the request to this, right? Which won't work because this API endpoint is part of Frappe backend. So where do we have to make the request? We have to make the request to this endpoint, right? Does this make sense? Even though our front end is running at this point, we want to make the backend requests to this endpoint. And if we do this, course will cause an issue because the site name is different. See, it is localhost 5173 and it is todo.localhost. Don't worry about the port. At least the host is different, right? It is todo.localhost and localhost. What if we can get our front end, right? We can get our front end running. So Chris says, could you show us which folder in the app to create the Vue app? Base folder, like the root of the app. Not inside any folder, just right in the app folder. So yeah, what if we can run our front end in the same site, like same domain? Port is different, that is fine. But it makes requests to the backend to our site. Will that work? So if we could somehow get our front end to run on this site and make any backend requests to this instead, to our Frappe site. Is it making sense? Should I show with a diagram? So there are two processes running. When in development, right? In production, automatically, whatever your site name is, let's say builder.frappe.cloud, automatically whatever requests are made by the front end will be made to this site only because this is the site where it is deployed on. But in development, the front end is running on a different server and your Frappe backend or the bench is running on different port, right? Is it making sense? So there are two things. One is the front in development. This is for development. In production, after the build, the Frappe server serves your VueJS app or the Frappe UI app. But in development, we have two things. The development server, which is the vite server, and then there is the Frappe backend. How do we make this talk to each other? Because then only we'll be able to use the magic, right? So two things we need to do. First, we make sure that any calls to API go to port 8000, right? Wherever or whatever you have configured your backend web server to. And the front end, make sure the request is made there and we use the same name as the site so we don't get course error, the course origin cross origin request sharing wala error. Make sense? How do we do that? So Frappe UI has plugin for that. Frappe UI has built a plugin for that. I said, right, the Frappe UI is just not set of components. It provides some extra stuff that makes it easy to connect to your Frappe backend. Just go to your vite config. And if you open up builder or LMS or anything, go in the front end, go to vite config, and you will see import Frappe UI from Frappe UI/vite. So Frappe UI contains a plugin for vite that will do the automation that we are talking about right now. See, so here we have to say Frappe UI So Vue plugin already Vite was using. Now it is using the plugin provided by FrappeUI. So what this plugin will do is, if you open and see it, it will make sure uh, it gets the common site config, right, from our Frappe app. It gets the web server port, so 8000 or whatever is defined in your config. And then it proxies, which means it will proxy to your backend. See, which requests any request to /app/login/API/assets or/files. This is what we manually wanted as well. Correct or not? We want Vite whenever we call the /API or /app to connect to the Frappe backend, not try to serve it itself, right? And that's it. That is what this plugin is doing. Cool. And to configure the port, right? If we want to run it to port 8080, I think it will automatically run now. Let's stop the development server, run it again, and you will see now it runs on port 8080. Why? Because of the FrappeUI plugin. And now if I open it up, right? I can open it up in localhost 8080. But again, as I said, right, if you try to make the backend request, it will fail because of course error. So that is why we'll open it up in todo.localhost. Both refer to the same 127.0.0.1. So same thing should show up, right? It shows up exactly the same. But now if you try to make the request to the backend, let's open up JavaScript console and make a request to /API/method/ping dot then whatever response we get, right? Console.log the response. Should I zoom in? See, it gave the response. It looks like it made the response request to 8080, but it proxied, right? In the Vite config, we defined the FrappeUI plugin, right? So it made sure that the request was made to our bench server, and that we can verify if we go to the bench and see the ping, right? It was actually made to our Frappe server and not the Vitka development server. That's it. Like, you don't have to know how it is working. Just make sure you use the plugin. Where is VS Code? Not this. Let's cancel this. Yeah, here. 8080 has insignificant. You can use any port you want. But yeah. What did we do? We imported Frappe UI from FrappeUI/Vite and used it as a plugin. This will configure the Vite to do the stuff that we want to proxy any API request or desk request to the actual Frappe backend. Is it clear? Any doubts in this? Now we can start the magic. We can start our ToDo app, right? I will shrink this to the side. And bring this here. And remove this. Remove this. Oh, 8000. We want 8080. So if it doesn't refresh, make sure you're in the correct port. Nice. I removed everything, right? So there is nothing visible. Let's remove and start from scratch. We don't want the confetti or anything like that, right? Now the build is set up. Whatever you develop, you run build and it will be in production. That we automated. So rewatch if you want to. But yeah, where do we start? We want to-dos, right? So this time we have, this is the third time we are writing a to-do app in this course, but this time it will be connected to the backend. So actual to-do doc type or the documents will be created, right? So I will just do one thing. I will open up todo.localhost desk, and we already have a to do doc type, so we don't have to create a new doc type. So it takes description is the only mandatory field. Yeah, it works. Save. See, so we now have one to do. Let's create one more. Buy milk. Okay, so we have two to dos. So our first step would be if somehow we can show this two to dos here, right? We want to do CRUD, right? So we'll start with R, the read part. Then we'll see create. Then we'll see delete, and edit will be homework as always. So how do we do that, right? So we have the REST API in Frappe. We can come here in the browser console or directly here, and we can fetch. We can fetch from /API/resource if you want v1, but I will use v2. That means it will be document slash to do, right? And then data will be d.json. The similar thing we did for what do you say? Dot then whatever response we get, we will console log it. Nice. Let's open up JavaScript console. There is an object which has data, and here are our two to dos, right? And we can make fields equal to everything. Internal server error. Okay, maybe this doesn't work. Okay, it throws error because I think this syntax won't work. This, even this doesn't work. Let's check the errors. JSON decode error. Okay. No, it is not public. We are authenticated. This is why, right? I said like this is the same site. The port is different, but check the URL part. So if you are authenticated on the desk, you are authenticated on the front end. Cookies are same. So we have cookie based authentication, right? So Prashant says, is the API public? Because we are able to call it directly, right? Without any authentication. We are logged it. We are logged it. We are logged in at todo.localhost, and we are serving our front end at todo.localhost. So we are authenticated by default. If I log out from the desk, let's log out. Come back here. Try to make the request again, right? You will see forbidden because same site, right? If you log out from desk, you log out from there. Try this, like when you log out from the front end CRM, you are actually logging out from the Frappe site because it's the same backend and the same site, just different ports, but still the requests are proxied to the same thing, right? That is what the plugin is doing. I know it is like little bit lot of wires to think about, but once it is clear in your mind, it will be easy to understand. But yeah, that is why before we implement our own login here, I will just log in again. And now this should work. Nice. But again and again writing this, and again, if you want to do other, so we'll have to show loading spinner as well, right? So let's show a loading spinner. Import ref is loading. I will tell you. Ref. So starting it will be false or true, right? And then once it is loaded, we'll say is loading equal dot value equal to false, right? So now we can say, so FrappeUI has loading text, I guess, from FrappeUI. Hopefully I'm correct. loading text, and we can use this loading text. See, it is, if it is visible or not, let me just zoom in, or maybe let's add some margin 2, margin 5, much better. So see the loading loading text. I imported it from FrappeUI, nicely styled loading with animation. And I will only render this if we are still loading the backend thing, right? So is loading. Now it is gone. So let's do one thing. Let's go to network tab and do slow 3G so we can see the loading spinner for a bit until the data is loaded. I'll refresh. And now it will become very slow. Let's wait, but just to see how it works. Too slow, too slow. Otherwise, it is too fast. So let me just do fast 3G then. Or we can have a button from FrappeUI. Show to-dos. And I will do no throttling for now. Yeah, show to-dos. And when you click on it, it should fetch the to-dos. Right? This way will be false. And when you call fetch to-dos, it will start fetching, which means this will be true. And then when it is done fetching, it will be false. Nice. So just for a brief moment, if you see it is visible, right? And now if I do throttling, network, slow 3G, and click on show to-dos, you will see it is loading. So it is calling the backend and it is done, right? But this managing of state is on us, right? So every time we have to check is loading, whether there was an error. So we have to create these variables everywhere. Wouldn't it be nice that whoever is fetching, this fetcher gives us some variables out of the box that, okay, right now I'm loading it, or there was an error, or I have cached the results. So this all comes with the resource manager in Frappe UI. So if I go to frappeui.com, so there was one section we didn't look into. There are these UI components, and then there is this piece called data fetching, right? So you can have a normal resource, which means any API endpoint, list resource. So you want a list of documents, right? This is exactly what we want. So you can see the usage. What you do is you import list resource from Frappe UI. Nice. Let's import it. I'll get rid of this manual fetching, manual API endpoints. Does that nothing. You will see how clean our code becomes. We don't want the ref as well. We don't want is loading right now. Even fetch to dos we don't want. Just the UI we have, right? And now I am importing this create list resource. So what this will do is this will let us nicely, like Frappe API to do, you tell it which doc type you want to fetch. So again, the documentation is here. Which fields you want, order by, start, page length, everything. So I want, let's say, fields, two fields, let's say name and description, right? Let's also get priority because I know to do has a priority, and I will store it in a variable. So this creates a reactive thing. Bear in mind, this will return a reactive object, which we can say to do list. And then if you want to automatically fetch it, right? By default, it won't automatically fetch. You will have to say to do list dot fetch. So if I open up JavaScript console, okay, there is some issue. Okay, let's see what's the issue. Network tab. Okay, I will have to zoom out a bit. Yeah, I tried to make a request to frappe.client.getList. Okay, see, the issue is if you see the URL it is making request to, it is making it to /frappe.client.getList. No. So it should make it to /API/method, right? Then, so how we tell FrappeUI that? How do we tell that to FrappeUI? We have to configure. We have to tell it that you are talking to a Frappe backend. Make sure you are doing stuff properly. For that, again, let's steal it from some other app. Main.js. In this case, Suraj has main TS, doesn't matter. Let's go to LMS. That may be simpler, JavaScript based. Frontend, source, main.js. Yeah. So we have to do this. We don't want the page meta plugin. So Frappe UI comes with some more plugins that make it easier for connecting or talking to the Frappe backend. So you have to say. So Vue has a plugin system, right? Like once you create an app, let's say const app equal to this and app.mount. I'm doing the same thing in one line. App.use Frappe UI. So this will use the Frappe UI plugin. And what else do we need? Set config, which comes from Frappe UI. So I'll tell you what it does. Just give me a second. And then we also want to use the resources plugin. Oh, I think it is no longer used. Cool. Let it be. Okay. So what did we do? We use the Frappe UI plugin, and this set config lets us set some configuration in the Frappe UI side, right? When Frappe UI wants some configuration, it is exposing the set config. So resource fetcher is Frappe request. So this is happening because Faris has tried to make this agnostic to framework. So if you are not using Frappe framework as a backend, you can still use the resource manager to fetch from other backends. But if you are using Frappe backend, then make sure you set the fetcher to Frappe request. And now our to-do should work. Let's go to JavaScript console. And you will see there are no errors because to-dos is working. And if we check the network tab, what request is being made to the backend. Let's check the network and click on refresh. Throttling. If you see, it made request correctly to /API/method/whatever frappe.client.getList. Why? Because we told Frappe UI that yes, indeed, you are talking to a Frappe backend. Make sure you prepend my whatever API path with /API/method using this lines 1, 2. Does this make sense? What did we do? So that is why we'll use a starter. So it gives all of this automatically if you are using a Frappe backend. That we'll do in the e-commerce project on Monday. But for now, is it clear what is happening behind the scene? Yeah, Frappe backend port is 8000, right? So in the network, it looks like it is making the request to 8080. But in vite config, we use the FrappeUI plugin, right? So it will make sure it proxies your request from 8080 to 8000, right? Doppio will do everything. So you don't have to do the manual setup thing. That is why it's like, you are just here. I am showing you all the behind the scenes stuff, so you understand the pieces. And then there are very easy ways to get it up and running. But there are many issues I have seen and discussed as well. People come up with very minor issues, but because they don't understand what is happening behind the scenes. So I want this series of lectures to be a good resource, so anyone can follow it through, understand the bits and pieces going around, and maybe suggest improvements as well. But yeah. So now we have the to-do list. How do we access the data? So let's just do one thing. So now you don't have to worry about loading. So if you vf to-do list dot loading, so it gives you some variables, right? Some properties that you can look into, right? If I click on show to-dos, I can say at click to-do list dot fetch. Don't worry, again, I will explain to you what is happening. And instead of fetching manually, now I'm fetching on click. Let's see JavaScript console. Is it fetching or not? We'll find out. Yeah, it's fetching, but it is fetching too quick. We are not able to show the loading spinner. So if I again do the throttling, oh no, there is some issue with this loading thing. Is it is loading? I don't think so. No. Let's figure it out. What is it doing? When I click on the button, it's loading. See, it is fetching it. It is visible in the network tab, but the loading thing is not visible. Okay. So let's do one thing. JSON.stringify, way to debug this. We'll see what all is there in to-do list. And let's prettify the JSON a bit. Yeah. So as you can see, it has the doc type, the fields, original data, the data it got back from the backend. Yeah, loading is false. So loading is correct, it means. So when I click on this, it should load again. Weird. Fine, anyways, like we have the data. This is the data. Cool. There are a lot of other things. Don't worry about that now. I will just remove this. But yeah, this let us do the, okay. So Gurshin says to-do list.list.loading. Okay, let's bring back their JSON and see where is that loading. Okay, it's inside list and then loading. Okay, got it. Because there can be multiple loading things. List, and we'll explore that while we are building the other stuff. We should have read the docs properly. And now for the split second, the to-dos loading spinner shows up. So this is all behind the scenes managed by FrappeUI. When it fetches the list, it will set the loading to true. That's it. And now let's render the data. Again, let's make sure we have the data first. So only if to-do list dot data, and then we can do JSON.stringify for now. We'll render it using v4. We all know that. To-do list dot data. And you will see it is a list which contains our name, description, and priority for the to-dos. We have successfully connected our front end with the Frappe backend. Let's use v4 to render this now. Unordered list. Come on. Li. Emmet seems to not work. V4 to do in to do list dot data, right? This will be to do dot name. See, we have two to dos. I'd want description instead, which is HTML for some reason, because in the backend we are using this rich text editor, right? So this is rich text, right? So if I do this bold, let's make milk bold. So this will give us, so if I refresh, fetch it again, you will see it is strong tag, right? So how do we make sure that we render the HTML here, right? So Vue gives us a directive called vHTML. So let's use that. So we'll say description is not a normal thing. Don't render as is. Remember the difference between inner HTML and inner text? Currently, this is inner text. We want it to be inner HTML. In that case, we can say vHTML equal to to-do.description. And then we can get rid of this part. Nice. See, works. We can do some styling if we want to. We have Tailwind here. So let's do the styling to the whole list. Space y1 or divide y2, right? And let's add margin 2 to the whole list. And then we can say h2 my to do's. Nice. Let's style it a bit more, maybe, or let's wrap it here. We don't want margin 2 now. So I'm just trying to do a basic styling of this thing. But main takeaway, just come to it. Font bold. This all still applies, right? Text to Excel. Margin top 3. Yeah. Margin top and bottom 3. Okay. So what did we do till now? So we wanted the to-do list from the backend. So we use the createListResource function from FrappeUI that lets us fetch a list of documents from the backend. So it asks for the doc type, which is mandatory because without the doc type, you can't. So which list to fetch? In this case, we wanted to fetch the to-do list doc type, to-do doc type. And then what fields do you want? Even filters, right? If you just want where priority is, let's say, oh, status is open. Let's do status open. Status open. So click on show to do's and it goes and fetches it. But if I close one of it, let's close by milk, then fetch again, right? That one is gone because it applied the filter. So this is much better than manually, right? Manually fetching and managing the state. It also will tell you if some error comes and then you can show the error to the user. Make sense? Create list resource, very useful. It will also help us create new to-dos, this same resource. So let's do one thing. We don't need the loading text. FrappeUI's button has a loading prop. So if you say loading true, right, to the prop, it will show this. You might have seen if you have used Insights or LMS or anything, buttons have the loading state, right? Because it has a prop. And directly, if we dynamically bound it to the loading of the to-do list, you will see, you click it, it loads for a split second, and it is loaded, right? So if you want to again see it, like just throttle using the network tab. See, it's loading, it is make the request, done, that's it. Yeah, so here, instead of static open, we'll have, so let's do this, we will create one. Let's complete the to-do list app fast. It's already 11:46. So let's use the Frappe's ListView component to render the to-dos. I don't want to do the manual styling, right? Because we are learning Frappe UI. So let's go to the list view. We want a simple list, and let's read how this code works. So you have to import the list view component. Let's do that. Right? And we don't want the button. Just fetch it automatically, right? That's what we want. So we'll remove this. And in the list resource, you can say auto true. So it will go and fetch immediately. See, as soon as you had auto true, the to do got fetched. And I also remove the filter for now. You can apply filters dynamically. We'll see. So loading text is no longer required, not the button. So we'll keep the button because we'll need a button to add a to do. We'll make it working later. So for now, I will add it here. Add to do. Right. Let's make it variant solid. So it's a Frappe espresso themed button, black. Plus icon if you want to. New to do. Cool. So we'll get it working later. It will open up a dialog box with the form. But yeah, let's first make sure we can use the list view to render. So what list view takes, it takes columns and rows. Okay. Then there are other, you can have grouped, you can have cell, you can have an empty list, right? Oh, let's use this one. Because then we'll be able to have new to do, right? So we have imported it. So you can give it a height. So height is, I think, required. Then the columns. So in our case, we have 3 columns. I think name. I don't think we have to render name. So let's just stick to 2. The description and the status. And for status, we will later on, we can render badge. So here is how you can provide an empty state to the list view. Yeah, let's start. I'll remove our manual list view that we created. And I will use Frappe UI's list view. Empty, nothing there. So it says no data. See, as soon as I used it, I got this UI, right? So let's configure it via options, right? So what all you can configure? It should not be selectable. So we are not implementing like, so it won't render that empty, what do you say, checkbox, right? It is used for multi-select. So you can implement that as well. Then show tooltip, resize column. So if you want resizable columns, as easy as adding this. So when you have columns, you will be able to resize them by dragging in the handles will come there. Empty state. Let's copy this here. Okay, maybe we missed. So no records found. We'll say no to-dos found. Create a new to-do to get started. And we'll say new to-do, right? And we can remove the my from here. Nice. So currently on click, it is console logging. Later, it will open up a dialog. Make sense? So we have a basic list view going on here, but now we have to define columns. Let's define the columns. So this is all configuration. You're giving configuration, it's creating UI for it. And then after the options, give columns. Again, we are dynamically giving it a list of columns. So we want two columns, right? The description. So label will be this. Okay. Label. You will see it appeared on the view. You can give it a key. So I'll tell you what key is useful for. Later. For now, just make sure to add a key. You can have the width. You can have prefix, like ignore it. Let's add one more column. So we'll keep it as simple as possible. Label and key. So think of it as label and name that we have in doc fields, right? Similar. One more thing was what? Priority. Priority key will be priority, right? Now we have the columns. So you can see columns, but there are no to-dos and they are resizable, by the way. See, like once we have the data, I think we'll be able to resize them. But yeah, you can see the handles appeared. Now we have to give the rows, right? Rows. Someone was asking how to create a table in Tailwind. Like use this instead. Rows, what are the rows, right? You already have the rows and those are inside to do list dot data. If you see, like apart from HTML not getting processed, we are properly able to render it, right? Priority and description. So we have our to-do list on the view now. So let's process it. So we can process it. Let's see if FrappeUI provides an option to process. Label is there, but for row, okay, cell slot. Let's read the docs a bit. Looks like we don't have a straightforward way to do this. But for now, what I can do is I can transform it, right? So I can say whatever list comes back, right, from the backend, I want to transform it before setting the data. So I can just do console.log d here, and you will see what we get as data. See, we get array of 2, then you can process it. So whatever data you got back from the backend, maybe you want to process it, right? In this example, I want to convert this HTML maybe to simple text, right? That is possible. So we can say, how do we do that? HTML to markdown. Can we do that? Or let it be for now. We'll fix this later. But let's first get the new to-do working. Is it clear how to use the ListView or what can be the users of this? So you can see this in the CRM used very well, or insights. Like this is the same component. It is very flexible. It gives you some more props that you can explore, right? I'll prepare some homework that makes sure that you get used to this. But yeah, very flexible list view. But right now we want a dialog. Whenever the user clicks a new to do, we want to show a dialog to create a new to do. Let's say import dialog, right? Use the dialog. Let's give it options. What were the options we were giving? Title will be new to do, and description will be create a new to do, and we need v model show create dialog, right? And this variable I will create here. Reactive variable again. Ref. So initially it will be false, right? But on click of this button, at click, show create dialog will become true. Let's see. It works, right? So now the dialog opens, but we need some input fields, right? To ask them for the description. So let's see if FrappeUI has some form of form control. It has. So it gives you style text, number, email, date, password is there. And what else? Search, text area, select, right? So let's just do description for now, which can be a text area. And you can see how we can use that. So we have to import form control. This is like Lego, right? Like you have the pieces. Now we are just combining it to make an app. Can this be used in Frappe version 11? Depends. Version 11 has the same API endpoints. And why are you still on version 11? You are missing out. So where do we want this form to be, right? Inside the dialog. This is where we have the slots. So if you open up dialog documentation, you will see you can provide body content using slots. Let's go back to form control, text area. Yeah. Let's copy this inside the dialog. And let's see if the dialog has that. No, because these are not default slots. So we learned about slots, right? Whatever you place inside the body of the component, it is passed on to the component. But there can be many of them. So I think this is this one. Or let's check the docs again. Body content, okay. Named body content. So there can be multiple slots. Yeah, here is our input. Let's change the placeholder to buy milk, right? Label to description. V model will do that, don't worry. But yeah, other than that, disabled is false. We don't need this. Looks fine. We'll model it to something, but don't worry. Wes, you can put, as Gurshin answered, you can put custom things inside the list view. You can add anything. See, for example, here it is rendering a badge. You can render a button. So just check custom list example and you will be able to see how you can render your own custom components inside each cell. That level of control. Permissions like this list, right? already your permissions will be applied, the backend permissions. So it will only return those that this user has access to. Since we are logged in as admin, we have access to everything. Okay, we are running late. Let's implement create to do and we'll be done. So what I will do is, in Dialog, we have actions, right? So let's go back to Dialog. If you see, here is actions, right? If we can have one action for us, you can have multiple. See, actions. So this will be rendered as buttons in the Dialog. So let's go here and I will say actions, list of objects. You can give it a label. Save. And what else? Variant and on click. Variant will be solid. On click. We won't do anything for now. Let's unexpected token. Where is it? This issue keeps popping. So I have a good solution for this. You can store this list somewhere and then pass it here. Okay, so now we have the dialog, we have the form control, and we have the action here. And on click, it should create the to do, right, in the backend. So I'll say console.log for now. Save click. And let's try it out. Again, I'm using double quotations. Okay. If I click save, you will see save clicked, right? But we don't want to show save click. We want to actually create the to do in the backend. So for that, we have to store this description somewhere, right? Again, we'll create a ref const to do description. And if you have multiple of this, just create a reactive object and link. Ref will start with empty. Then I can do v model. So this is we learned previously. This all still applies, right? Even if you are using FrappeUI. I'll just come here and say v model to do description. That is it. Now, if you add anything, you click save. We want to add this to do description in the backend. So let's create a function. Create to do, and it will take a description, or it has access to the description. How do we create a new thing, right? Let's refer to the documentation. This is the C part in the CRUD. So list resource, usage, options API, list of options. See, a list resource is made up of multiple individual resources. In our running example, the resource object that faces the list is to-do.list, right? All the properties of the resources. Similarly, there are resources for fetch one. If you just want to fetch one object, one document, set value, insert, delete, and run doc method, right? So what do we want right now to create a new to-do? We want insert. So let's see how we call that one. So we can say to-do.insert.submit, like to-dos, whatever this resource is. So we can say to-do list dot insert dot submit, and we'll give it the description to-do description dot value. So whatever is the value of the input that the user has given us. And then we'll call this create to do on click. Let's try it out. Buy some more milk. Hit save. Let's go to the backend to check if it got created. Yes, it got created. See, buy some more milk. You didn't need to define a new resource. You didn't need to call a new API. You were directly able to come here, use this same list resource, insert property, and then call submit on it. Make sense? So you can also define what happens after the success. You show a confetti maybe, etc., etc. So you will only learn when you build using this. Watching this might look like more complicated than it is. It is very fairly straightforward once you get the hang of list resource and how to create. So this was create. You can say that on success, right? In the list, you can define what happens on success, whatever data you got back. Console, or we can show, we still have the confetti in our project, right? Let's bring back the confetti. This will be the last thing we do today. I know you might be also really tired. Not FrappeUI. See, that's how tired I am. Canvas. Come on. Confetti. Yeah. Next class is on Monday. On success, let's show the confetti. We have to close the dialog as well, but we'll see how to do that. It keeps creating by some more milk. It's fine. Let's show confetti. Copy this one. Okay, let's try it now. Yes, confetti works because we have placed it inside on success of insert. See? So we are telling FrappeUI that when you are doing any insert, on success of that, run this piece of code, right? So when we when we call insert.submit here, it created, right? We start with the confetti, we end with the confetti. Nice. So this is create and list. Read. Update and delete, we'll see. Similarly, there is a dot delete, right? And dot set value. Explore those two. So whatever happens, like for example, errors, right? Let's say error happened. So there is a error message component in FrappeUI. Error message. Let's render it down below. Error message. And this resource will give you a reactive error object. So you can bind it to, I think, message. Error, I don't recall. We can check. We have the docs, right? We have an error message component. Error object. Okay, message. Cool. So you give it the message that will be. So suppose if this error message, we want to show whatever error occurred during the creation, right? Not fetching the list, during the creation. So you can say to do list dot insert dot error. So if there are any errors, it will show up here. So let's try creating an error. And if you see value missing for to do description. Nice, right? So you just this resource you just created called one function called release resource. It is giving you a variety of reactive properties and utilities to talk to your Frappe backend, right? Makes sense? Practice is the only thing. That's why we'll build a whole app from scratch. We haven't even touched authentication or routing yet. That we will do on Monday. If required, we'll do a session on Tuesday or Wednesday. We'll see. But yeah, we have to close the dialog. Let's do that before going off. So when the user hits save, it should close the dialog. So let's see how we can do that. Let's go to the documentation for Dialog. Docs, no docs, fine. Oh, V model, right? We have the V model. So after showing confetti, we can say show create dialog dot value equal to false. How do we forget? FrappeUI has given us the control. So let's say end the meeting, save confetti, and the meeting appears here because FrappeUI knows that something changed. It automatically refresh the to do. Nice. To run. So Gopi says today's session was mind blowing. You opened my eyes to new destinations. I'm excited to explore more things in Frappe. Yeah, we're just getting started. We'll learn more and do more after 2 days. You expect a good homework by tomorrow. Since I have the time, I'll prepare a nice one. But yeah, you have to play around with this stuff. I didn't want to fix this one because otherwise you'll get more confused right now. We can fix this using the slots thing. But yeah, I hope this makes sense. Nice. So we're able to create to do, and we can empty this. We learned, right? We already learned this. So on success, we can say to do description dot value equal to an empty string. So create to do promise. Last one. Save. Last one. And that's how we end today's session.